the exodus of the Jewish people that were living in Arab countries over many, many centuries, who were living for many, many years. And we know that while the 1948 independence of Israel, there was a mass exodus from the Muslim countries of many, many Jewish people from all these countries. So we spoke about this already, part one. Now we're going to do part two. We spoke more about the North African countries, how it affected Tunisia, Libya, those sort of places, Algeria. Today we're going to speak about more the Middle East, like Iraq and Iran. So let's first of all speak about how it affected Iraq, especially in the 1930s and 1940s. We know that the British mandate over Iraq would come to an end in June 1930. Come October 1932, the country would become independent. The Iraqi government responds to the demand of the Assyrian autonomy, let's just say. The Assyrians were being, let's say, the indigenous Eastern Aramaic speaking Semitic descendants of the ancient Assyrians and Mesopotamians, were, let's say, largely affiliated to the Assyrian Church of the East, the Chaldean Catholic Church and Syriac Orthodox Church. There was a massacre at that point in time of the Assyrian villagers by the Iraqi army in August 1933. I think this event over here was the first sign to the Jewish community that, let's say, minority rights at that point in time were seemingly meaningless, you could say, under the Iraqi monarchy. It was King Faisal, known for, let's say, the more liberal policies, which we've spoken about before in the series. He would die in September 1933 and was succeeded by his anti-British son. That he happened to be King Faisal's son. Now, Ghazi began promoting Arab nationalist organizations headed by Syria and Palestinian exiles. I think there was a 1936 and 1939 Arab revolt at that point in time. Palestine, they were joined by rebels such as a Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. The exiles, let's say, preached pan-Arab ideology and would foster anti-Zionistic propaganda at that stage in time. Now, there was Iraqi nationalists, I think, under Iraqi nationalists, Nazi propaganda began to infiltrate the country, as Nazi Germany was anxious to expand its influence in the Arab world. Someone named Dr. Fritz Grober, he resided in Iraq, I think, since 1932. He began to vigorously and systematically disseminate hateful propaganda against Jews. Published, and I think Radio Berlin had begun broadcasting in Arabic language. Anti-Jewish policies had been implemented since 1934, and the confidence of Jewish people was further shaken by the growing crisis in Palestine, I think in 1936. Between 1936 and 1939, 10 Jews were murdered, and on 8 occasions that were reported over there were bombs were thrown on Jewish locations over there. As you can see, the horrors of the anti-Semitism in that place. Come 1941, in Anglo-Iraqi war, riots known as the Farhud broke out in Baghdad in the power vacuum following the collapse of the pro-Axis government of Rashid Ali al-Gaylani. While the city, I think, was in a state of instability, 180 Jewish people were killed and another 240 were wounded. 586 Jewish-owned businesses were looted at that stage in time. And I think you will also see that 99 Jewish houses were destroyed. Now, I think in some accounts, the Farhud marked the turning point for the Jews of Iraq at that stage in time. So why? Other historians, however, see the pivotal movement for the Iraqi Jewish community much later, especially between 1948 to 1951. I think Jewish communities would prosper along with the rest of the country throughout most of the 1940s. And many Jewish people left Iraq following the Farhud, would return to the country shortly afterwards, and permanent immigration did not accelerate significantly really until 1950 to 1951. Very interesting. Anyone that's new to the channel and you're tuning in live, please subscribe to the channel. We do really important content, Jewish history content, and so on and so forth over here. So please subscribe and welcome to our community. Welcome to our channel. And Wishing you well, and hopefully you can watch many videos over here. And I think either way, the Farhud is broadly understood to mark the start of a process of politicization of the Iraqi Jews in the 1940s, primarily among the younger population, especially as a result of the impact it had on hopes, let's say, of a long-term integration into Iraqi society. In the direct aftermath, let's say, of the Farhud, many joined the Communist Party of Iraq. This was to protect, let's say, the Jewish community of Baghdad, yet they did not want to leave the country, and rather they sought, let's say, to make a battle, to fight for better conditions in Iraq itself. So at the same time, the Iraqi government that had taken over after the Farhud reassured the Jewish community in Iraq that there will be a more smooth life would return to Baghdad, which saw a marked, let's say, improvement of its economic standing, let's say, during the Second World War at that point in time. Okay, so I think shortly after the Farhud in 1941, there was Mossad al-Aliyah Bet sent missionaries, it's reported over Wikipedia, to Iraq to begin to organize emigration to Israel. Initially, by recruiting people to teach Hebrew and hold lectures on Zionism. I think come on 1942, Shaul Abigur, he was the head of Mossad al-Aliyah Bet, entered Iraq undercover in order to survey the situation of the Iraqi Jews with respect to immigration to Israel. During the 1942-1943, Abigur made 4 further trips to Baghdad to arrange, let's say, that required Mossad machinery, including, let's say, a radio transmitter for sending information to Tel Aviv, which remained in use for 8 years. Now, I think it was come the late 1942. One of the emissaries explained the size of their task of converting the Iraqi community to Zionism at that point in time. So this was widely reported over, writing that we have to admit that there is not much point in organizing and encouraging immigration. We are today fruit of many years of neglect, and what we didn't do can't be corrected now through propaganda and creating one-day enthusiasm. It was not until 1947 that legal and illegal, let's say, departures from Iraq to Israel would begin. Around 8,000 Jewish people left Iraq between 1919 to 1948, with another 2,000 people leaving between mid-1948 to mid-1950. It's very interesting. Anyone tuning in live, welcome to our community, and please subscribe to the channel as we're exploring the exodus of the Jewish communities from Arab countries and from Iran here on this multiple part series. So part number 2 over here, so welcome and educate. 1948 Arab-Israel War, let's speak about it now. Now, there was approximately 150,000 Jewish people in Iraq at that point in time, a very large Jewish community, and it was concentratedly mostly in Baghdad and in Basra. Hopefully at one stage in time we'll speak about the Jewish community of Iraq. I think a few months before the UN vote on partition of Palestine, the Iraqi's Prime Minister Nouri al-Said, he told the British diplomat at the time, someone named Douglas of Busk, that he had nothing against Iraqi Jews who were long established and a useful community. However, if the United Nations solution was not, let's say, satisfactory, the Arab League might decide on severe measures against the Jewish people in Arab countries, and he would be unable to resist at that point in time the proposal. Now, I think in a speech at the General Assembly Hall at Flushing Meadow, New York, on Friday, 28th of November, 1947, Iraq's foreign minister, someone named Fadid Jamal, included the following statement: partition imposed against the will of the majority of the people will jeopardize peace and harmony in the Middle East. Not only the uprising of the Arabs of Palestine is to be expected, but the masses in the Arab world cannot be restrained. The Arab-Jewish relationship in the Arab world will greatly deteriorate. There are more Jews, let's say, in the Arab world than outside of Palestine than there are in Palestine itself. In Iraq alone, we had about 150,000 Jews who share with Muslims and Christians all advantages of political and economic rights, we says over. Harmony prevails among Muslims, Christians and Jews, but any injustice imposed upon Arabs of Palestine will disturb the harmony of the Jews and non-Jews in Iraq. it will breed interreligious prejudice and hatred. That's what was stated over there. Remember that we see a lot of anti-Semitism taking place here in Iraq, atrocious anti-Semitism, and just strengthens the claim of the exodus of the Arab Jews, which many people will point out over there. Now, I think it would be in February the 19th, 1949, Al-Said will acknowledge the bad treatment that the Jews have been victims of in Iraq during the recent months. It was. He claims he will warn, unless Israel would behave in an appropriate manner, events might take place concerning the Iraqi Jews. This is ridiculous. It's purely anti-Semitic to threaten the Iraqi Jewish population because of what's going on in another country. Over here, Al-Said's threats had no impact, though, on the political level on the fate of the Jewish people, but were widely published in the media. I think, come in 1948, the country was placed under martial law, and the penalties for Zionism were increased. Courts martials were used to intimidate wealthy Jews. The Jewish people were again dismissed from civil service. Quotas were placed on university positions. Jewish businesses were boycotted. So you can see the anti-Semitism that was huge level. I think, and the Shafik Addis, one of the most important Jewish businessmen in the country, and we have to point out he wasn't necessarily known as a Zionist, was arrested and publicly hanged for allegedly selling goods to Israel, shocking the community. So you can see, even the people that weren't necessarily pro-Israel were moving to the state of Israel, like Mr. Addis over here. You can see the anti-Semitism that was portrayed among Jewish people over here, and really strengthening the claim that just being Jewish, just for the actions of just being Jewish itself, the problems it caused, and how Zionism and Judaism are really intertwined. And the Jewish community's general sentiment was, if a man as well connected and powerful as Addis, Mr. Addis, could be eliminated by the state, other Jews will not be protected any longer. Additionally, the most, let's say, Arab League states, Iraq forbade any legal immigration of its Jews after 1948 war on the grounds that they might go to Israel and could strengthen that state. At the same time, increasing government oppression of the Jews in Israel create an atmosphere at that time of fear and uncertainty. So anyone tuning in live at the moment, we are exploring the history of what actually occurred when there was exodus of the Jewish community from various different Arab countries. So if you're new to our channel over here, welcome to our community, and please everyone subscribe to the channel. Okay, so let's continue. However, by 1949, Jews were escaping Iraq at about a rate of 1,000 a month. At the time, the British believed that the Zionist underground was agitating in Iraq in order to assist US fundraising and to offset the bad impression caused by Jews' attitudes to, let's say, to Arab refugees. It's just a claim over here. So the Iraqi government were taking only 5,000 of the approximately 700,000 Palestinians who became refugees in 1948 to 1949, despite British and American efforts to persuade Iraq to admit more. In January 1949, the pro-British Iraqi Prime Minister, someone named Nouri al-Said, would speak about, let's say, the idea of deporting Iraqi Jews to Israel with British officials, who, let's say, explained that such a proposal would benefit Israel and adversely affect Arab countries. According to Mayor Glitzenstein, such suggestions were not intended to solve either the problem of the Palestinian or let's just say Arab refugees, or the problem of the Jewish minority in Iraq, but to torpedo plans to resettle Palestinian Arab refugees in Iraq. I think it was July 1949, the British government proposed to Nouri al-Said a population exchange in which Iraq would agree to settle 100,000 Palestinian refugees in Iraq. Nouri stated that if a fair arrangement could be agreed, the Iraqi government would permit a voluntary move by Iraqi Jews to Palestine. The Iraqi-British proposal was reported in the press in October 1949. That's what's reported over here. It's a very, very key, let's just say, event that took place at that stage in time. Now, let's continue. Now, I think it was, so anyone that's tuning in live at the moment, welcome to the community, and please subscribe to the channel over here. Please subscribe, and we appreciate everyone. I think it was in July 1949, the British government, they would, in 1949, the British government proposed this, it came in 1949. On 14th of October 1949, Nouri al-Said raised the exchange of population concept with the economic mission survey at the Jewish Studies Conference in Melbourne in 2002. Philip Mendes would summarize the effect of al-Said's evacuations on Jewish expulsion as, in addition, the Iraqi Prime Minister, someone named Nouri al-Said, tentatively canvassed and then shelved the possibility of expelling the Iraqi Jews and exchanging them for an equal number of Palestinian Arabs. Okay, let's speak about the temporary legislation of Jewish immigration to Israel over here. Now, I think it was in March 1950, Iraq reversed their earlier ban on Jewish immigration to Israel, and they would pass a law of 1 year duration allowing Jewish people to emigrate on the condition of relinquishing their Iraqi citizenship. According to someone named Abbas Shiblak, many scholars state that this was a result of American, British and Israeli political pressure on Tawfiq al-Sawidi's government, with some studies suggesting there were secret negotiations. According to someone named Ian Black, the Iraqi government was motivated, let's say, by considerations on an economic sphere, the chief of which was that almost all the property of departing Jews reverted to the state treasuries. You can see huge anti-Semitism. They get their properties, all that hard work they've done, it goes to null, it goes to the Iraqi government. And also that Jewish people were seen as restive and potentially troublesome minority that the country was best to rid of. And Israel mounted an operation called Operation Ezra and Nehemiah to bring as many of the Iraqi Jews as possible to Israel. Now, I think the Zionistic movement at that point in time had first tried to regulate the amount of registrants on the issue relating to the legal status were clarified. Later, it allowed everyone to register. 2 weeks after the law went into force, the Iraqi Interior Minister demanded a CID investigation over why Jewish people were not registering. A few hours after the movement allowed registration, 4 Jews were injured in a bomb attack. That's a cafe in Baghdad. More anti-Semitism here. Now, immediately following the March 1950 Denaturalization Act, the immigration movement faced significant challenges. Initially, local Zionist activists forbade the Iraqi Jews from registering from immigration with Iraqi authorities because the Israeli government was still discussing absorption planning. However, I think it was on the 8th of April, a bomb exploded in a Jewish cafe in Baghdad, and a meeting of the Zionistic leadership later that day agreed to allow, at that time, registration without waiting for the Israeli government. And I think a proclamation encouraging registration was made throughout Iraq, I think, at that stage in time. I think this was, if I'm not mistaken, just finding a place over here. I think it was in the name of the I'm just going to start again over here. I think it was on the 8th of April, a bomb would explode in a Jewish cafe in Baghdad, and a meeting of the Zionistic leadership later that day that agreed to allow registration without waiting for the Israeli government. A proclamation encouraging registration was made throughout Iraq in the name, I think, however, I think at the same time, immigrants were also entering Israel from places like Poland, Romania, countries in which I think David Ben-Gurion assessed there was a risk that the communist authorities would soon close their gates, and Israel, let's say, transportation. So they saw it important getting the Iraqi Jews at that point in time to come back into Israel. And I think it was very, very important. So I think however, at the same time, the immigrants were also entering Israel from Poland, Romania, countries from which the Prime Minister at the time, David Ben-Gurion, assessed there was a risk that communist authorities would soon close their gates, and Israel therefore delayed the transportation of Iraqi Jews because of this. As a result, by September 1950, while I think 70,000 Jewish people had registered to leave, many would sell their property and losing their jobs. Only 10,000 left the country. According to someone named Esther Meyer Glitzenstein, the thousands of poor Jews who had left or had been expelled from the peripheral cities and who had gone to Baghdad to wait for their opportunity to emigrate were in an, let's say, intolerable, were in especially a bad state. They were housed in public buildings and were supported by the Jewish community. The situation was intolerable, and the delay became a significant problem for the Iraqi government of Nouri al-Said, who replaced Tawfiq al-Said in mid-September 1950, as a large number of Jews in limbo created problems politically, economically, and for the domestic security. Particularly infuriating to the Iraqi government was the fact that the source of the problem was the Israeli government. They felt it was, let's just say. As a result of these developments, al-Said was determined to drive the Jewish people out of his country as soon as possible. And I think on 21st August 1950, al-Said threatened to revoke the license of the company transporting the Jewish exodus if it did not fulfill its daily quota of 500 Jewish people. And in September 1950, he summoned a representative of the Jewish community and warned the Jewish community of Baghdad to make haste, otherwise he would, let's say, take the Jews to the borders himself. You can see really the treatment of the Jewish community over here. How terrible actually it was over there. I think 2 months before the law expired, after about 80,000 Jewish people had registered, a bombing campaign began against the Jewish community of Baghdad. The Iraqi government convicted and hanged a number of suspected Zionistic agents for, let's say, perpetrating the bombings. Now remember, it wasn't necessarily done by Zionists over here. It was quite strongly also, it could have been from the Iraqi people itself. But the issue, let's say, of who was responsible remained subject of scholarly dispute. So remember, they tried to, all throughout Jewish history, they tried to blame the Jews for everything. So they would actually fold that there. Now, I think scholars dispute this among themselves. I'll state that out. Just reading from Wikipedia. All but a few thousand of the remaining Jews then registered for immigration. In all, about 120,000 Jewish people left Iraq. This historian of them, Esther Meyer Glitzenstein, disputed the claim that these bombings were the primary motive for the immigration of Iraqi Jews, noting that accounts by these Jews did not mention the bombings as a cause of immigration. Now, according to Gatt, it is highly likely that one of Nouri al-Said's motives in trying to expel large numbers of the Jews was the desire to aggravate Israel's economic problems. He had declared as such the Arab world, although I think Nouri was well aware that absorption of these, let's say, immigrants was the policy on which Israel based its future. They wanted this. So the Iraqi Minister of Defense told the US ambassador that he had reliable evidence that the immigrating Jews were involved in activities injurious to the state and were in contact with the communist agents. So over here, remember, this is a lot of anti-Semitism going on in Israel. So who can believe what these people said at that point in time? So that's something that's one. I think it was between 19 April. Anyone tuning in live at the moment to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. We're exploring the Jewish history, what happened, how the Jews left the various Middle Eastern countries, North African countries, and Iran in a multiple part series. This happens in part number 2, and there's probably about a 4 or 5 part series over here, I guess. Now, according to Gatt, it is likely that one of Nouri al-Said's motives in trying to expel a large number of Jews was to, let's say, desire to aggravate Israel's economic problems. He declared as such to the Arab world, although Nouri was well aware that absorption of these immigrants was a policy of which Israel based its future, as I said before. Between April 1950 and June 1951, Jewish targets in Baghdad were struck 5 times. Iraqi authorities then arrested 3 Jewish people, claiming they were Zionistic agents, and sentenced 2 of them, Shalom Saleh Shalom and someone named Yosef Braham Basri to death. The third man, someone named Yehuda Tajar, was sentenced to 10 years in prison. In May and June 1951, arms caches were discovered that allegedly belonged to the Zionist underground, let's just say, allegedly supplied by the Yishuv after the Parakud of 1941. There had been debate as to whether, let's just say, those bombs were planted by Mossad to encourage Iraqi Jews to immigrate to Israel, or if Muslim extremists wanted to do it to drive out the Jews. So many lawsuits, I think, came within regards to this and inquiries in Israel. Once again, I wouldn't take for a pinch of salt anything that these extremists on the Muslim side said at that stage in time, and you can see the anti-Semitism treatment, how they treated the Jewish people over there. So that's something I will say to now. The immigration law was to expire in March 1951. 1 year after the law was enacted, on the 10th of March 1951, 64,000 Iraqi Jews were still waiting to emigrate. The government enacted a new law blocking assets of Jews who had given up their citizenship and extending the immigration period. The bulk of the Jewish community leaving Iraq did so via Israeli airlifts. It was called Operation Ezra and Nehemiah, with special permissions from the Iraqi government. Friends, I'm going to take a short break over here. We are exploring the history of the Jewish community of Iraq over here, of the exodus from countries. We're going to continue in a couple of minutes, so please wait. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to the channel, and I'll be back in 1 minute, friends, over here, as we're going to continue this important program at the moment. So watch your space. I'll be back in just take a short 1 minute break, friends. Okay, thanks everyone for waiting at a moment. Once again, please subscribe to the channel. We've got fantastic content here. We're exploring the exodus of the Jews from Arab Muslim countries post 1948. We've been talking a bit about history, and once again, it's a multiple part series over here. Let's talk about after 1951 in Iraq. Now, I think after 1951, a small Jewish community remained in Iraq following Operation Ezra and Nehemiah, and restrictions were placed on them after the Ba'ath Party came to power in 1963. And following the Six-Day War, persecution will greatly increase. Jewish people had their property expropriated and bank accounts frozen. Their ability to do business was restricted. They were dismissed from public positions, and they were placed under house arrest for extended periods of this time. In 1968, scores of Jewish people were in prison on charges of spying for Israel. In 1969, about 50 were executed following show trials. And most infamously, a mass public hanging of 14 men, including 9 Jews, and 100,000 Iraqis marched past the bodies in a carnival-like atmosphere. You can see how disgraceful anti-Semitism was. Jewish people began speaking across the border to Iran, from where they proceeded to Israel or the UK. In the early 1970s, the Iraqi government permitted Jewish immigration and the majority of the remaining community left in Iraq. By 2003, it was estimated that this once very thriving Jewish community had been reduced to 35 Jews. You see, we've gone from 150,000 Jews in Baghdad to only 35, and a handful more, I think, in Kurdish areas in the country. So that, in a nutshell, was we spoke about Iraq. Let's now turn to Egypt over here. What went on in Egypt at that time? Well, we know Egypt also had a very thriving Jewish community. We've spoken about many of the rabbis of yesteryear over here. So now let's see what happened over here in Egypt. Now, going back to that point in time now, the anti-Jewish sentiment in Egypt, although, let's say, there was a small indigenous community, most Jewish people that were living in Egypt in the early 20th century, we're going back now again, now we're speaking about Egypt, they were recent immigrants to the country who did not share, let's say, the Arabic language and culture when they had to come in at the same time. Many were members of the highly diverse Mutu-Masurian community, which included other groups such as Greeks, Armenians, Syrians, Christians, and Italians, and in addition to the British and French colonial authorities. Now, I think it was until the 1930s, late 1930s, the Jewish people, both indigenous and new immigrants, like, let's say, other minority groups, tended to apply for foreign citizenship in order to benefit from a foreign protection. The Egyptian government made it very difficult for non-Muslim foreigners to become, let's say, naturalized. Let's say the Jews that were less well off, the poorer Jews, most of them indigenous and Oriental Jews, were left stateless, although they were legally eligible, I believe, for Egyptian nationality. The drive to Egyptianize public life and the economy harmed, let's say, minorities, but the Jewish people had more strikes against them than other people, obviously. In the agitation, let's say, against the Jewish community of the late 1930s and early 1940s, especially the 1940s itself, the Jewish person was seen as an enemy. Why was this? The Jewish people were attacked because of their real or alleged links to Zionism. Jewish people were not discriminated because of their religion or race, like in Europe, but for political reasons. The Egyptian Prime Minister at the time was someone named Mahmoud al-Nukrashi Pasha. He told the British ambassador all Jewish people were potential Zionists. That was his phrase. Anyhow, all Zionists were communists. You can see more anti-Semitism rhetoric. On 24th of November 1947, the head of the Egyptian delegation to the United States of America, General Assembly, someone named Muhammad Hussein Kal Pasha, said the lives of 1 million Jews in Muslim countries will be jeopardized by the establishment of a Jewish state. And on the 24th of November 1947, Dr. Haikal Pasha said, if the UN decide to amputate a part of Palestine in order to establish a Jewish state, Jewish blood will necessarily be shed elsewhere in the Arab world to place in certain and serious danger 1 million Jews. You can see terrible anti-Semitic rhetoric over here. Mahmoud Bey Fawzi of Egypt said, imposed partition was sure to result in bloodshed in Palestine and in the rest of the Arab world. Now, I think the exodus of the foreign Masirun, the Egyptianized, let's say, community, which included a significant number of Jewish people, began following the First World War, and by the end of the 1960s, the entire Muta Masarion was effectively eliminated. According to someone named Andrew Gorman, this was primarily a result of the decolonization process and the rise of Egyptian nationalism, let's say, of the Egyptian Jews, was impacted by the 1945 Arab anti-Jewish riots in Egypt, though such immigration was not, like, say, very big at that point in time, as the government stamped the violence out of the Egyptian Jewish community leaders who were supportive of King Farouk. I think in 1948, approximately 75,000 Jews lived in Egypt. Around 20,000 Jewish people left Egypt. I think it was during 1948 to 1949. There were events at that point, strings of events of the 1948 Arab-Israel War, including the 1948 Cairo bombings. Now, a further 5,000 people will leave between 1952 to 1956 in the wake of the Egyptian Revolution in 1952, and then later the false flag Levin affair. It was the Israeli invasion as part of the Suez crisis caused a significant upsurge in immigration, with 14,000 Jewish people leaving in less than 6 months between November 1956 and March 1957, and a further 19,000 emigrate over at that stage in time over the next decade. Now we're going to speak about the 1956 Suez crisis. Anyone tuning in live, we are exploring the history of what actually went on with the exodus of the Jewish community from Arab lands. 1948, what happened beforehand. This is a multiple part series and part number 2. So friends, if you like this fantastic content over here, please subscribe to the channel and join our community. We're nearing 8,000 subscribers, friends. So you're more than welcome to join, and stay tuned for some brilliant educational content and tours all over Israel that we're doing over here. I wish you all a fantastic morning in the process. Okay, let's talk about now so we're talking about the 1956 Suez crisis. I think it was in October 1956 when the Suez crisis erupted. The position of Mutamasirin, including, let's say, the Jewish community, was significantly impacted. There was 1,000 Jewish people arrested, 500 Jewish businesses were seized by the government. More anti-Semitism, a statement branding the Jewish people as Zionists and enemies of the state. It was read out in mosques of Cairo and Alexandria. Jewish bank accounts were confiscated, and many Jewish people lost their jobs. Lawyers, engineers were not allowed to work in their professions. Thousands of Jewish people were ordered to leave the country and told that they may be sent to concentration camps if they stayed. And they were allowed to take only one suitcase and a small sum of cash, and they were forced to sign declarations donating their property to the Egyptian government. Foreign observers reported that members of Jewish families were taken hostage, apparently to ensure that those forced to leave did not speak out against the Egyptian government. Jewish people were expelled, or they would leave. They were forced out by the anti-Jewish feeling in Egypt. Some 25,000 Jewish people reported over that point in time. Almost half the Jewish community would leave. They would mainly go to Europe, United States of America, various South American countries, and also Israel, after being forced to sign declarations that they were leaving voluntarily and agreed with confiscation of the assets. You can see this pure anti-Semitism, all the wealth that they've lost over here, and no compensation. As I stressed, similarly, measures were enacted against British and French nationals in relation for the invasion. Now, I think it was come 1957, the Jewish population of Egypt had fallen only to 15,000 over here. So you can see a lot of the anti-Semitism that was actually taking place at that point in time, and everyone, the sufferings there was. That's something that I will point out. Everyone that's tuning in live, welcome once again to our community, and as we're exploring the history of what actually happened during the 1948 time period of the exodus of the Jewish people from Muslim countries, what went on, the confiscation of properties, all the anti-Semitism, the people, many people obviously suffered tremendously at that window of time, and so on and so forth. So we are speaking about that at the moment here in this special part series over here. Okay, as we continue, friends. Okay, so let's speak a bit about the 1960s and 1970s in Egypt. I think it was in 1960, the American embassy in Cairo wrote of Egyptian Jews that there is definitely a strong desire among most Jewish people to emigrate, but this is prompted by the feeling that they have limited opportunity or from fear for the future, rather than by any direct or present tangible mistreatment at the hands of the government. I think it was in 1967, Jewish people at that stage in time were detained and they were tortured, it was reported over, and Jewish homes were confiscated. So you can see theft of property and so on and so forth. So that's something we'll point out about. So they would lose their status. They were tortured, confiscated. The vast majority of Jewish men without foreign passports were detained. Following the Six-Day War, the community fell to only 2,500 people, and by the 1970s practically ceased to exist, with the exception of a few remaining families. And I think as of 2015, an estimated 30 Jews remained in Egypt, most of them elderly. So you can see the Jewish community at that stage in time was absolutely tiny. So that's something that we very much need to point out. Okay, so that was Egypt. Now let's speak about Yemen. Over here, much can be said within regards to Yemen and the Jewish community over there, what happened over there. Now I think the Yemeni exodus began in the year 1881, 7 months prior to the more well-known first Aliyah from Eastern Europe. The exodus came about as a result of Europe in the Mutasarrifate of Jerusalem, which created jobs for labouring Jews alongside local Muslim labour, thereby providing an economic incentive for immigration. And I think this was aided by the re-establishment of Ottoman control over the Yemen Vilayet, allowing freedom of movement within the empire, and the opening of the Suez Canal, which would reduce the cost of travelling considerably. Between 1881 and 1948, 15,430 Jewish people had immigrated to Palestine legally. So remember, we've spoken about this on various videos which were recorded about rabbis. In 1942, prior, let's say, the formulation of the 1 million plan, David Ben-Gurion described his intentions with respect to such potential policy to a meeting of experts and Jewish leaders, stating that it is a mark of great failure by Zionism that we have not yet eliminated the Yemen exiled diaspora. That's what he stated. Over. And now, if one includes Aden, there was about 63,000 Jewish people in Yemen in 1948, quite a large community. In 1947, rioters killed at least 80 Jewish people in Yemen, a British colony in southern Yemen. In 1948, the new Zaydi Imam Ahmad bin Yahya unexpectedly allowed his Jewish subjects to leave Yemen, and tens of thousands poured to Aden. The Israeli government's Operation Magic Carpet evacuated around 44,000 Jewish people from Yemen to Israel in 1949-1950. Immigration would continue until 1962, when I think the civil war in Yemen broke out. A small community remained until 1976, though I think it mostly immigrated from Yemen since. And in March 2016, the Jewish population in Yemen was estimated to be about 50 people. So you can see a lot of anti-Semitism and the dwindling of the community there. Now we're going to speak about Lebanon and Syria now to progress this video. Now the area known as Lebanon and Syria was home of one of the oldest Jewish communities in the world, dating back to 300 before Common Era. Let's speak about Lebanon first. Okay. I think it was in November 1945, 14 Jews were killed in anti-Jewish riots in Tripoli. So you can see more, once again, anti-Semitism and the insecurity there was for the Arab Jewish populations. Unlike in other Arab countries, the Lebanese Jewish community did not, let's say, face grave peril during the 1948 Arab-Israel War, and was reasonably, let's say, relatively protected by governmental authorities. Not to say everything was totally smooth over there at that point in time. Lebanon was also the only Arab country that saw a post-1948 increase in the Jewish population, principally due to the influx of Jews coming from Syria and Iraq. In 1932, the national census of put, let's say, the country's Jewish population at around 3,500. In 1948, there was approximately 5,200 Jewish people, I believe, living in Lebanon. Their number increased after the first Arab-Israel War to roughly 9,000 in 1951, including an estimated 2,000 Jewish asylum seekers reported over. The largest communities of Jews in Lebanon were in Beirut and the villages near Mount Lebanon, Day al-Kamar, Baruch, Bechamon, and the Hasbaya. While I think the French mandate saw a general improvement, let's say, in conditions for Jewish people, the Vichy regime placed restrictions on them. The Jewish community actively supported Lebanese independence after the Second World War and had mixed attitudes, let's just say, within regards to Zionism. at that point in time. So anyone tuning in live, welcome to our channel over here. Now, however, I think negative attitudes towards Jews increased after 1948. And come what 1967, most Lebanese Jews had immigrated to Israel, or the United States, or to France, or to places like Canada. 1971, someone named Albert Elia, he was a 69-year-old Secretary General of the Lebanese Jewish community, was famously kidnapped in Beirut by Syrian agents and imprisoned under torture in Damascus, along with Syrian Jews who had attempted to flee the country. More anti-Semitism. Now, a personal appeal by the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, someone named Prince Sadruddin Aga Khan, to the late President Hafez al-Assad, failed to secure Mr. Elia's release. The remaining Jewish community was particularly hard hit by the civil war in Lebanon, and come with the mid-1970s, the community would collapse. In the 1980s, Hezbollah kidnapped several Lebanese Jewish businessmen, and in the 2004 elections, only one Jewish person reportedly had voted in the municipal elections. There are now reported over maybe between 20 to 40 Jewish people living in Lebanon. I don't know if this is just according to Wikipedia. Now, friends over here, we're exploring what happened in the Jewish countries, where there were Jewish communities in Muslim lands. Please subscribe to the channel over here. If you haven't subscribed yet, welcome. We've got fantastic content here on this channel, so welcome everyone. Let's speak now about Syria. Let's turn our attention to Syria. I think it was in 1947. Rioters in Aleppo burned the city's Jewish quarter and killed 75 people. As a result, nearly half of the Jewish population of Aleppo opted to leave the city, I think initially to neighboring, let's say, Lebanon. Come on, 1948, there were approximately 30,000 Jewish people in Syria, quite a large community. 1949, following the defeat in the Arab-Israeli war, the CIA backed March 1949 Syrian coup d'etat, installed Hosni al-Zaim as the president of Syria. And I think the Zaim permitted the emigration of large numbers of Syrian Jews, and 5,000 would leave to the land of Israel. The subsequent Syrian government placed severe restrictions on the Jewish community, including barring immigration. In 1948, the government banned the sale of Jewish property, and come on 1953, Jewish bank accounts were frozen. I think the Syrian secret police will closely monitor, let's say, the Jewish community. Over the following years, there was many Jewish people would manage to escape, and there was a work of supporters, particularly someone named Judy Feld-Carr, in bringing out Jews out of Syria and bringing their plight to the attention of the world. It would raise awareness, let's say, of their situation at that point in time. I think the Syrian government attempted to stop Syrian Jews, if I'm not mistaken, from, let's say, taking away their assets. And the American consulate in Damascus noted, I think it was in 1950, that the majority of Syrian Jewish people have managed to dispose of their property and to emigrate to Lebanon, Italy and Israel. In November 1954, the Syrian government temporarily lifted its ban on Jewish emigration, and the various restrictions that the Syrian government placed on the Jewish population were very, very big. Now, Jewish people were legally barred from working for the government or for banks, obtaining driver license, having telephones in their homes or business premises, or purchasing property. In March 1964, the Syrian government would issue a decree prohibiting Jews from traveling more, let's say, than 3 miles from limits of their hometowns. In 1967, in the aftermath of the Six-Day War, anti-Semitic riots will break out in Damascus and in Aleppo. Jewish people were allowed to leave their homes only for a few hours daily. Many Jews found it impossible to pursue their businesses, ventures, because the larger community was boycotting their products. And come on 1970, Israel launched the famous Operation Blanket, a covert military and intelligence operation to evacuate Syrian Jews. It was managing to bring a few dozen young Jews to Israel. Now, friends, anyone tuning in live, we're exploring what happened in the Muslim countries and the exodus of the Jewish community. So welcome to our community, welcome to our channel, and please subscribe to the channel. Okay, now clandestine Jewish immigration continued as Jews attempted, let's say, to sneak across the borders into Lebanon or Turkey, often with the help of smugglers, and make contact with Israeli agents or local Jewish communities. And I think it was in 1972 that demonstrations were held by 1,000 Syrian Jews in Damascus after 4 Jewish women were killed as they attempted to flee Syria. More anti-Semitism. The protest surprised the Syrian authorities, who closely monitored Jewish community, eavesdropped on their telephone conversations, and they tampered with their mail at that point in time. Now, I think there was a famous Madrid conference of 1991. The United States of America put pressure on the Syrian government to ease its restrictions on Jews. And I think during Pesach in 1992, the government of Syria began granting exit visas to Jewish people on condition that they did not emigrate to Israel. At that time, the country had several thousand Jews. The majority left for the United States of America, most to join the large Syrian Jewish community in South Brooklyn, New York, although some went to France and Turkey. And I think it was 1,262 Syrian Jews who wanted to emigrate to Israel were brought there in a 2-year covert operation. Now, come on, 2004, the Syrian government attempted to establish, I think, better relations with its immigrants, and delegation of 12 Jews of Syrian origin visited Syria in the spring of that year. And as of December 2014, only 17 Jews remained in Syria. 17. According to someone named Rabbi Avram Hamra, I believe, 9 men and 8 women, all over the age of 60 it was. So you can see, once again, in the pattern is continuing. The mass exodus of Jewish community and much anti-Semitism attached to this mass exodus over here. So very interesting. Anyone tuning in live, welcome to our community. We're exploring the history of the Jewish people in Arab lands, the exodus, mass exodus for them. We've got fantastic content here. So please subscribe to our channel and join our community. We've got fantastic content and really welcome and treasure all you fantastic members out there. Let's talk now about the Transjordan and Jordanian West Bank at that point in time. What actually happened in those Jewish communities over there? The depopulation of local Jewish communities. Now, I think following the 1948 Arab-Israel War and 1949 armistice agreements, all Jewish communities in Transjordan, the Jordanian West Bank at that point in time, don't want to use Israel, it's part of Eretz Israel also, and the Egyptian occupied Gaza Strip were depopulated. The communities and localities affected included Jerusalem, Jewish Quarter, Hebron, Ein Surim, Mas'ud Yitzchak, Revadim, Beit Arava, Kalia, Kfar Etzion, Atarot, Kfar Darom, Neve Yaakov, and Tel Or, those different places. I think in many cases, these depopulations represented final stages of early evacuations, which began in response to both the 1929 Palestine riots and 1936 to 1939 Arab revolt. The Hebron Jewish community, already having lost a majority of its population as a result of mandatory British evacuation, following the 1929 Hebron massacre, lost its sole remaining Jewish resident, someone named Yaakov ben Shalom Ezra, during the war. Now, I'd recommend everyone, we recorded a video with regards to the Hebron massacre that actually took place at that point in time. I think it was on Tisha B'Av, if I'm not mistaken, so everyone check out the channel for that video. I think Kfar Darom, the last of the Gaza Jewish communities, following the mandatory evacuations in 1929, was itself ultimately abandoned following a 3-month siege by the Egyptian army in 1948. I think in the case of Dead Sea region, let's say the kibbutzim of Beit Arava and the Kalia, negotiations with Transjordan King Abdullah were conducted in an attempt for residents to remain. I think when those talks failed, the villagers fled by boat to an Israeli military post at Mount Sodom. Now, it's interesting. I think there were Judean settlements in Kfar Etzion, a kibbutz established southwest of the Bethlehem, and Jerusalem adjacent Atarot and Neve Yaakov. They fared in a less peaceful manner during this specific battle conflict. All 3 villages were besieged by a combined force of Arab Legion and local, let's say, irregulars. This was a result in complete evacuation of Atarat and Neveyakov, a massacre of 127 of Etzion's defending force and, let's say, citizens. Now, I think it was Kamot, the village of Tel Or, had the distinct of being the only Jewish locality permitted in Transjordan proper at the time. I think it was established in 1930 in the vicinity of Naharayim, and there was hydroelectric power plant. The village, let's say, was built as a housing compound for Jewish crews operating the power plant and their families. Following a prolonged battle between Yishuv forces and the Arab Legion in the area, the residents of Tel Or were given an ultimatum to surrender or leave the village. Very, very interesting enough. So let's speak a bit about the depopulation of the Jewish Jerusalem's quarter. We've visited the Jerusalem quarter here on this channel, so check that out also. The largest depopulation during the war occurred in Jerusalem's Jewish quarter, where its entire population, about 2,000 Jewish people, were besieged and ultimately forced to leave en masse. And the defenders surrendered on 28th of May 1948. The Jordanian commander is reported to have told its superiors for the first time in 1,000 years, not a single Jewish person remains in the Jewish quarter. A single building remains intact. This makes the Jews' return here impossible. We can see the atrocious anti-Semitism over there that took place over here. We're going to continue and speak about Bahrain in a minute. I'm going to take another very short break over here. So please, everyone, in the meantime, if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, please subscribe. And I'll come back in 1 minute over here. Okay, thanks everyone for waiting. We're going to continue at the moment. We're exploring the history of what happened, the expulsion of Jewish communities from Arab lands of 1948, about that specific era. So let's speak now about Bahrain over here. What happened in Bahrain, another country where there was a Jewish community, I believe, before. Hopefully we'll record a separate video with regards to Jewish community history of Bahrain at another later stage of time. Okay, so I think Bahrain, if I'm not mistaken, have joined the Abraham Accords anyway quite recently. So Bahrain's tiny Jewish community, mostly the Jewish descendants of immigrants who entered the country in the early 20th century from Iraq, numbered between 600 and 1,500 in 1948. Now, I think in the wake of 29th of November 1947, that UN partition vote, demonstrations against the vote in the Arab world were called but 2nd to 5th of December. The first 2 days of demonstrations in Bahrain saw rock throwing against Jewish people, but on the 5th of December, mobs in the capital of Manama looted Jewish homes and shops, destroyed the synagogue, beat any Jews they could find, and murdered one elderly woman. So you can see more atrocious anti-Semitism took place. As a result, many Bahraini Jews fled Bahrain. Some would remain behind, but other riots, as they broke out following the Six-Day War, the majority would leave. I think Bahraini Jews immigrated mainly to Israel, where a particularly large number settled in the Pardes Hana, or the Karakul, and the United Kingdom and the United States. And I think come up the year 2006, there was only 36 Jews left in Bahrain. So you can see the Jewish community over here. Likewise, we spoke about Kuwait and Sudan, the Jewish communities there. It totally vanished at a later stage in time. So let's speak a bit about Iran over here and what happened in Iran now, because that's also part of the exodus of the Jewish communities over here. Anyone tuning in live, we're exploring, because the 30th of November marks Israeli Knesset, the expulsion of Jews from Arab countries and from Iran. So we're doing this multiple part feature on what actually went on in these countries. So I think there was in Iran, let's talk about Iran now, the exodus of Iranian Jews refers to the immigration of Persian Jews from the Pahlavi Iran in the 1950s, and a later migration wave from Iran during and after the Iranian Revolution of 1979. At the time of Israeli independence in 1948, there was 140,000 Jewish people to 150,000 Jewish people living in Iran. Now, I think it was between 1948 and 1953, about 1/3 of Iranian Jewish people immigrated to Israel. And come up between 1948 and 1978, an estimated 70,000 Iranian Jews immigrated to Israel. In 1979, there was the Islamic Revolution. What happened? In 1979, the year of the Islamic Revolution, there were about 80,000 Jews in Iran. In the aftermath of the revolution, immigration reduced to the community to less than 20,000. The migration of Persian Jews after the Iranian Revolution was mainly due to, obviously, religious persecution, economic hardships. There was also insecurity after the deposition of the Shah regime and consequent internal violence and the Iran-Iraq war. Now, I think in the years following the Islamic Revolution, about 31,000 Jews immigrated from Iran, of whom about 36,000 went to the United States of America. Obviously, there are large communities in Los Angeles, as we know, and New York. 20,000 moved to Israel, a bigger number, and 5,000 to Europe. And while anti-Semitism in Iran, let's say, was not as severe, obviously it was still quite bad as in Europe and the Arab world, the strong anti-Zionist policy of the Islamic Republic of Iran, let's say, created a tense and uncomfortable situation for Iranian Jews who became vulnerable to accusations of alleged collaboration with Israel. And I think in total, more than 80% of Iranian Jews fled or migrated from the country between 1979 to 2006 over here. So friends, anyone tuning in live, we're exploring the exodus of the Jewish communities from the Arab countries at 1948 time period. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed yet. And we're going to speak about Turkey now. It's a multi-part series over Turkey. Now, when the Republic of Turkey was established in 1923, Aliyah was not particularly, let's say, popular at that point in time among Turkish Jewish population. Migration from Turkey to, let's say, Palestine was very low in the 1920s. During 1923 to 1948, approximately 7,300 Jewish people immigrated from Turkey to Palestine. Let's say a steady amount. After the 1934 Thrace pogroms, following the 1934 Turkish resettlement law, immigration to Palestine would increase. I think it was estimated to be around 521 Jewish people left for Palestine from Turkey. And I think in 1934 it was, and I think at that point in time, 1,445 left in 1935. And immigration to Palestine was organized by the Jewish Agency and the Palestinian Aliyah and Noah organization, I think at that point in time now. I think the Valik Vergisi, it was a capital tax established in 1942, was also, let's say, very significant in encouraging immigration from Turkey to Palestine between 1943 and 1944. and I think 4,000 Jewish people will emigrate at that point in time. The Jews of Turkey reacted favorably to the creation of the State of Israel. Between 1948 and 1951, 34,547 Jewish people immigrated to Israel, nearly 40% of the Jewish population at that point in time. Immigration was stunted for several months. I think come what 1948 November, it was when Turkey suspended migration permits as a result of pressures from Arab countries. I think it was in March 1949. The suspension was removed when Turkey officially recognized Israel, and immigration will continue. 26,000 emigrating within that year. You can see a high figure. The migration was entirely voluntary and was primarily driven by economic factors, given the majority of immigrants were from lower classes, I should say. And in fact, the migration of Jews to Israel is the second largest mass immigration wave out of Turkey. The first being the population exchange between Greece and Turkey. And I think come 1951, immigration of Jews from Turkey to Israel will then go at a much slower rate at that point in time. In the mid-1950s, 10% of those who had moved to Israel would return to Turkey at that point in time. So you can see there was a returning of people to Turkey. A new synagogue, the Neve Salom, was constructed in Istanbul in 1951. We're going to hopefully, we spoke about the Turkish Jewish history. I think it was a 3 or 4 part series, which I recommend everyone to look at on our channel. Now, generally Turkish Jews, I think in Israel, integrated well into society and aren't necessarily distinguishable from other Israelis. However, I think they maintain obviously Turkish culture, connection with Turkey, and are strong supporters of close relations between Israel and Turkey. Obviously nowadays it's not such a good relation between the two countries, but obviously they would, in an ideal world, they would hope that there would be. I think even though historically speaking, let's say populist anti-Semitism was more rarer.
Good morning. Do you have pumpkin muffin, please? Can I have one, please? Here, I'll give you the money.
No, sorry about that. Okay. Even though I think historically speaking, populist anti-Semitism was rarer in the Ottoman Empire and Anatolia than in Europe, historic anti-Semitism still existed in the empire, started from the maltreatment of Jewish Yishuv prior to World War I, but most notably the 1917 Tel Aviv and Jaffa deportation which was considered as the first anti-Semitic act by the empire since the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. There had been a rise in anti-Semitism. Obviously, on the night of the 6th or 7th September 1955, the Istanbul pogrom would occur, I believe, at that stage in time, and it was unleashed more anti-Semitism, although primarily aimed at the city's Greek population. The Jewish, I think it was at the Greek population. The Jewish and Armenian communities at that point in time of Istanbul were also targeted to a degree, and I believe that would cause, yes, they were targeted. This caused, I believe, huge damage, I believe, to from a material point of view. It would do. More than 4,000 shops, 1,000 houses belonging to Greeks, Armenians and Jewish people were destroyed, but it deeply shocked the minorities throughout the country. I think come 1986, it was 1986, increased attacks would actually occur on Jewish targets throughout Turkey, and it will impact, let's say at that point in time, the security of the community and urge many to emigrate. The Neve Shalom synagogue in Istanbul had been attacked by Islamic militants 3 times at that stage in time. And I think come the 6th of September 1986, Arab terrorists gunned down 22 Jewish worshippers, Jewish players and prayers, mitpalim as we say in Hebrew, and wounded 6 during a Shabbat service at the Neve Shalom synagogue. Now this attack was blamed on the Palestinian militant Abu Nidal, and I think come 1992, the Lebanese-based Shiite Muslim group of Hezbollah carried out a bombing against the synagogue, but this time thankfully nobody was injured. The synagogue was hit again, I think, during the 2003 Istanbul bombings, alongside, I think, the Beit Israel synagogue, which will kill 20 people and injuring over 300 people, both Jewish and Muslim. And with increasing, let's say, anti-Israel, anti-Jewish attitudes in modern Turkey, especially under the Turkish government of Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the country's Jewish community, well, I think it's still believed to be the largest among Muslim countries, declined from 26,000 in 2010. And now there's only about 17 to 18,000 here. I think more recently in 2016, I'm not too sure. I'd assume it's a lower figure now here in 2025. Now, in the next part of the series, we are going to speak about other Muslim majority countries in the series over here, which will probably be another part or two. This was the second part here. So, friends, firstly, I wanted to tell all of you, please subscribe to the channel over here. If you haven't subscribed yet, we've got fantastic content as we tour all over Israel. We explore the history of all the Jewish communities across the world. At the moment, we're speaking about very small minority Jewish communities. We spoke about Kuwait, Sudan, Bangladesh, the Jewish communities there, Pakistan, Afghanistan, all these countries which no one really speaks about. What were the Jewish communities like there? We're one of the few places online that will speak about it in English also. So that's something I'll point out over here. And we're a community, we've spoken about 1,400 approximately biography videos of great rabbis from yesteryear, from all these countries, Ottoman countries, North African, Asian countries, one of the few places that do that. So one of the reasons to subscribe to our community over here as we try and give over some fantastic content and important content every single day here on this channel. Yeah, so we also, one thing we like to do here on this community is we like to go around to different places every single day to record the different videos at different spots and explore and educate at a very high level. That's something I will definitely point out here from the onset. So many reasons to join the channel, to join the community and learn more about our Jewish roots, about our Jewish history and so on and so forth. That's something I will definitely recommend everyone and tell everyone here on the outset. So we don't just record biography videos of great rabbis of yesteryear. Also on this channel we record videos on the history of other Jewish communities, as we said before. We also, friends, we do tours all over the country. We like to tour around Israel. We've done a lot of videos recording all over the city of Bet Shemesh. We've recorded videos all over Jerusalem and so on and so forth. And we like to do short clips exploring different parts of this beautiful country. We'd like to show this country, the splendor of this country and all the other great different parts in of itself to really inspire, let's just say, the 21st century listener or reader or watcher of social media content to actually educate and to really bring an enthusiasm of Judaism and really try to educate within regards to those different spots. So we really do try to tour everywhere and we've been very highly successful within regards to that. We have already recorded over, I believe, an approximation of about maybe a good few thousand videos already here on this channel from places. So that's something I would definitely recommend everyone to look into and to watch and to explore within regards to our channel at the moment, as we're really going from strength to strength and really increasing the content that we're doing over here. And just before we will just leave this video, okay, friends, what content we've got up next? We're going to do probably another 2 parts over here about the history of the Arab-Jewish conflict over here with regards to the Jewish community's seizing. That's one thing I would definitely say here from the outset. So we've probably got a lot more parts within regards to that. And today we plan to, also another thing that we're doing here on this channel is we're recording videos of content of a daily tidbit on the Talmud, on the Daf Yomi. So if you watch over, we've been recording for the last 3.5 years a video every single day about what actually of a tidbit that's actually happened inside the Talmud and the Daf Yomi respectively over here, so to give over some real wisdom. So that is another very exciting project that we are doing over here on this channel. Just give me 1 minute break and continue in a second. זה 520 שקל? כן. תודה רבה. Okay, yeah, sorry about that, everyone. As we're just going to walk together here on. Thank God we had some rain here last night in Israel. One thing we do over here in Israel, we pray for rain 3 times a day. All Jewish communities, all synagogues will pray for rain. We insert the tefillah of Mashif HaRuach or Morit HaGeshem inside our tefillot, inside our prayers, to pray for rain. That's one thing I want to say. See, we are Jewish people over here all over the world, from all these different countries, from Muslim countries, from European countries. We're speaking about the Exodus. One thing we had in common, every single day inside our prayers, we would, and the Shemona Esrei, our yearning would, and the hearts would be returning to Zion. That was so many of our tefillot that we actually say respectively over here. And it just shows that our connection with Israel, of the Jewish community over here. And we see that what happened in post-1948, much of it was forced expulsion. If you've watched these 2 parts of the series, as we've explored all these countries of Jewish communities from the Arab lands, so many Jewish people were forced, properties were confiscated. And we spoke about in the previous video about the amount of wealth that the Jewish Arab people, they lost during all those years, and as they had to flee the various Arab countries and Iran, and hundreds of billions, I believe, was lost in assets alone. So that's why there's a big movement out there for Jewish people to get the people that were living in these countries to get all those assets back, or get the value of it back, and get the compensation, which is very, very important, and that has to be recognized all over the world. So one of the reasons why we're recording these videos is to highlight the awareness of this, that very few people are speaking about this, and many people are speaking about the Palestinians, about what all their things, all their issues. No one speaks about the Jewish populations of these Arab countries, and how much we lost so much wealth. So many people were killed, so many people were humiliated, so many people were injured, and no one really speaks about them, and there's very, very little sympathy, especially inside the media. So one thing that we're trying to do over here is to highlight this here in this channel, all these anti-Semitisms that took place on all these different windows of time. I think it's very, very important more people take these initiatives that we are doing at the moment over here on this channel and speak about it also. I think it's very, very important. So anyone watching out there, one of my messages will be, speak about it. If you happen to be teaching in a school, speak about it, educate. If you're working in a Jewish organization, speak about it. A Jewish charity, speak about it. It's a very important topic. If anyone can go even onto the news, onto the media, and speak about it, it would be great if we get like a Jewish representative from one of these countries to speak about it. Let's heighten the awareness of the plight of the Arab Jews in those lands and what we lost over here. And that's one of the goals of doing these videos here, this series, is to really highlight that over here. As we're a Jewish community here, we love to explore the history of our rich history, and especially what actually took place in Ottoman countries and Arab countries in of itself. So, fantastic content we've got over here. Well, that's the project that we work on. We record every single day, if you haven't noticed yet, with a interesting Jewish personality every day, where they give over some great wisdom. Usually most of them are rabbis, and some of the top rabbis we have and authors across the world will actually speak in our channel. We've already recorded with nearly 500 rabbis already. Some of them very well-known speakers, sought after speakers over here. So I'd recommend everyone to actually watch those videos that we've got. It's another part of somewhere you find on the channel. We've got a section all dedicated towards that, and so on and so forth. So yeah, we are over here. My family actually come from Iran originally. We do. I think before, when the Shah was about, just to add a few notes, I think the freedom in Iran was actually relatively not so bad. It was quite good, albeit there was always anti-Semitism. From what I hear, it was definitely smoother than it was. But after that, in the 1970s, it became intolerable for many Jewish people to leave. And many Jewish people had to flee at that stage in time, which is very, very widely reported over and very much spoken about. I recommend everyone to, we're going to record hopefully a few part series also within regards to the history of the Jewish community of Iran. Now, one thing we did do was, I think we did a video recording about the Iranian chief rabbis, the chief rabbis of Iran. That is something that we did record at one stage, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere on the channel. We also spoke about the Mashhadi Jewish community, about the anti-Semitism that the community suffered in of its own right, and so on and so forth. So that is something that we did speak about also. So I recommend everyone to look into that. So I think we're going to call it a day over here, friends. You know, wow, we had like probably a couple of thousand people that were watching this live video here today. A very informative video. It has been an extra length video, I have to point out over here. So probably the next part will also be an extra length and a very detailed video. What have we got coming up today? Maybe we're going to record about another historic biography video of another famous rabbi of yesteryear. That might be the plan also, which I will point out. And so watch your space within regards to that. We've put on a Talmudic video also today. That's something. And we're gonna put up another tour, I believe, which we did yesterday. We toured all over Jerusalem, and if anyone was watching live, we went to the area of Har Nof. We explored biblical Israel, the forest of Har Nof, and the various different streets and sights and sounds of this beautiful country, and archaeologies also, respectively. So I recommend everyone to do that. So friends, everyone, you've tuned in live, you're watching that at the end of the video, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed yet. Wish you all a fantastic day. You're not going to find many enthusiastic people like me on these historic videos and so on and so forth of various different countries. So an extra reason to subscribe and enjoy this every single day as we bring fantastic content. And wishing you all a great day. And we explored the expulsion or force or voluntary expulsion of Jewish people from the Arab countries, but it doesn't stop us talking about it, what actually happened over here, because we are in Israel and we are proud, and we are going to be here, and we're going to see the rebuilding of the third Bet HaMikdash ASAP. Now friends, having a great day, and let's hope for also at the same time peace all over the world, with all our brothers and sisters, all our countries will unite, and we're just going to see blessings for all of us, whatever religion we are in, and just good things, and we'll see the rebuilding of the third temple. Have a fantastic day, friends, and enjoy.